I am Christian, 29 years old, and this is the story of how I finally broke free. After years of seeking approval that never came, I graduated college with honors in psychology. That should have been my proudest moment. Instead, at my graduation dinner, my parents uttered words that shattered my world. "We wish you were never born." What they never expected was my response, words that silenced an entire restaurant and changed my life forever. If you have ever felt unappreciated by those who should love you most, this story might resonate with you. Before I continue, let me know where you are watching from in the comments, and hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had to stand up for yourself against family. Growing up in Brooklyn, an affluent suburb of Boston, my childhood looked perfect from the outside. Our colonial-style house with its manicured lawn and my parents, Harold and Elizabeth Johnson, were the picture of upper-middle-class success. My father was a corporate attorney at a prestigious firm downtown, and my mother was heavily involved in local charity organizations, not out of compassion, but for the social standing it provided. From my earliest memories, nothing I did was ever quite good enough. When I brought home an A- in third grade, my father looked at the paper with such disappointment you would have thought I had failed entirely. "The Robinson girl got straight A's," he said, sliding the paper back across the kitchen counter. "I expect better next time." I remember nodding, fighting back tears as I retreated to my room. That pattern continued throughout my childhood. If I won second place in a science fair, the conversation would center on who won first and what I should have done differently. When I made the swim team but wasn't the fastest, dinner conversation revolved around how I needed to train harder. There was always someone better, always a higher bar I had failed to reach. My father had a very specific vision for my future. It was medicine, law, or business. Nothing else was acceptable. "Those are careers with prestige," he would say during our Sunday dinners, cutting his roast beef into precise pieces. "Everything else is settling for less." My mother was no better, though her focus was different. Where my father demanded academic and career excellence, she scrutinized my appearance and social connections. "Christian, you could be so pretty if you lost 10 pounds, she would say while examining herself in the hallway mirror. Or, "Why aren't you friends with the Sullivan girl? Her father is on the hospital board, you know." Every friendship, every outfit, every aspect of my appearance was evaluated for how it would reflect on the family. The only person who seemed to see me for who I was my grandmother Evelyn, my father's mother. Unlike her son, she had a warmth that made her home feel like a sanctuary. "You have a beautiful mind," she would tell me when I shared my thoughts about books we had both read. "Never let anyone dim your light." During visits to her small apartment across town, I discovered psychology books on her shelves. She had been a counselor before retiring, and our conversations about human behavior and emotional health sparked something in me. For the first time, I found a subject that fascinated me completely. "Psychology is for people who couldn't handle real science," my father scoffed when I mentioned my interest at 15. "It's all subjective nonsense." My mother nodded in agreement, adding, "Besides, darling, those people barely make any money." Despite their dismissal, I secretly devoured books on psychology, hiding them under my mattress like contraband. When it came time for college applications, I applied to psychology programs despite my parents' insistence on pre-law or pre-med tracks. This led to the biggest fight we had ever had. "We are not paying for you to get some useless degree," my father shouted, his face red with anger, "not when you have the capabilities to do something worthwhile." "Psychology is worthwhile," I argued back, for once standing my ground. "People need help understanding themselves and others." "People need to pull themselves together and stop whining," he retorted. "This discussion is over." It wasn't over, though. My grandmother Evelyn stepped in, offering to help with my tuition. "Your future belongs to you, not to your parents," she told me over tea in her small kitchen. "Study what calls to your heart." My parents reluctantly agreed, but their disapproval was palpable. Every holiday break was filled with thinly veiled comments about real careers, and wasting potential. Then, during my sophomore year, Evelyn passed away unexpectedly. I was devastated, losing not just my grandmother but my only true ally in the family. She left me a modest inheritance that helped with the remaining tuition costs, along with a letter I keep to this day. Your compassion is your strength. The world needs more hearts like yours. After her funeral, my parents seemed to double down on their criticism. Without Evelyn to buffer their disapproval, I felt more alone than ever. I threw myself into my studies, determined to graduate with honors, hoping that academic excellence might finally win their approval. All the while, anxiety gnawed at me. I started having panic attacks before family visits, my stomach knotting with dread at the inevitable criticism that awaited. By senior year, I had developed coping mechanisms: deep breathing, positive self-talk, and seeking support from the few friends who understood. But the deep-seated need for parental approval never quite went away. Despite everything, some childish part of me still hoped that one day they would see me, really see me, and be proud of who I had become. My college experience at Northeastern University was transformative, despite the shadow my parents cast over it. For the first time, I found myself surrounded by people who valued ideas and conversation without constant judgment. My roommate Jennifer was studying journalism and had a refreshing directness I admired immediately. "Your parents sound like nightmares," she said bluntly, after hearing about one particularly unpleasant holiday visit. "You know that's not normal, right?" Then there was Kyle, from my research methods class, whose quick humor and genuine interest in psychology matched my own. He had grown up in foster care and had a perspective on family that challenged my ingrained beliefs. "Family is who treats you like you matter," he told me once over coffee. "Sometimes that's not the people who share your DNA." Their friendship created a safe space where I could be authentic without fear of criticism. Slowly, I started to discover who I was outside of my parents' expectations. I joined the Psychology Honor Society, volunteered at a crisis text line, and found myself drawn specifically to developmental psychology, the study of how people grow and change throughout their lives. In my junior year, I caught the attention of Dr. Rosenberg, a well-respected professor in the field. She invited me to assist with her research on resilience in young adults who had faced early life adversity. The irony wasn't lost on me, studying resilience while trying to build my own. "You have exceptional insight, Christian," Dr. Rosenberg told me after I presented preliminary findings to the research team. "Have you considered graduate school? With your abilities, you could make significant contributions to the field." Her validation was like water in a desert. I worked harder than ever, staying late in the lab, refining research protocols, and helping to prepare presentations for conferences. When she suggested I apply for a position at the Bowman Institute for Human Development in Seattle, I was both terrified and exhilarated. The institute was nationally recognized, and such a position would be a tremendous start to my career. "They're very interested in you," Dr. Rosenberg said when she called me into her office one snowy February afternoon. "Your application was impressive, and my recommendation couldn't have been stronger. They want you to start in August after graduation." I sat in stunned silence, clutching the official offer letter. A real job at a prestigious research institute, doing work I was passionate about. This was validation that my chosen path had value, despite what my parents had always claimed. As graduation approached, I threw myself into final exams and completing my thesis on emotional regulation strategies. The work was demanding but fulfilling. For the first time, I could envision a future where I built a career I loved rather than one chosen to please others. 3 weeks before graduation, my mother called. I braced myself for the usual questioning about my plans, ready to defend my job offer yet again. "Your father and I have been talking," she said, her voice carrying its usual crisp efficiency. "We would like to attend your graduation ceremony." I nearly dropped the phone. In our previous conversations, they had been vague about whether they would come, citing busy schedules and the inconvenience of traveling from Boston to the university. "Really?" I couldn't keep the surprise from my voice. "Of course, darling. It's a milestone after all. And your father has some connections. He would like you to meet people who might help you find a more suitable position than this research thing. I should have recognized the agenda behind their sudden interest, but hope clouded my judgment. Maybe they were finally coming around. Maybe seeing me graduate with honors would make them realize that psychology was a legitimate field and that I had talent worth respecting. With newfound optimism, I threw myself into graduation preparations. I bought a new dress, a sophisticated navy blue that looked professional yet stylish. I made dinner reservations, cleaned my apartment obsessively in case they wanted to see it, and rehearsed ways to present my job offer in terms that might impress them. "They're really coming," I told Jennifer as we tried on our graduation gowns in our apartment. "Maybe things will be different now." Jennifer looked skeptical but supportive. "Just remember who you are," she said, adjusting my graduation cap, "no matter what they say or do." The night before graduation, I lay awake imagining scenarios where my father would shake my hand with genuine pride, where my mother would hug me without stiffness, where they would finally say the words I had longed to hear. "We are proud of you." The fantasy was so vivid, I could almost believe it might happen. Morning came with sunshine streaming through my windows and butterflies in my stomach. As I applied my makeup carefully and styled my hair, I felt like I was preparing for the most important job interview of my life. Because, in a way, I was still trying to get hired as the daughter they could love unconditionally. Graduation morning arrived with perfect New England spring weather, sunshine warming the historic campus buildings and a gentle breeze stirring the leaves. I woke up early, too nervous to sleep, and spent extra time getting ready. My navy blue dress hung pressed and ready, and I laid out the honor cords I had earned through my academic achievements. "Today is the day they finally see me," I whispered to my reflection as I applied mascara with a slightly trembling hand. Jennifer knocked on my bedroom door. "Your chariot awaits, valedictorian," she joked, though I wasn't actually valedictorian, just graduating summa cum laude. We arrived at the campus arena 2 hours early, as instructed. The place was already buzzing with excited graduates adjusting caps and taking photos. I texted my parents to let them know where they could find seats with a good view. "We're already here," came my mother's reply. "Your father wanted to make sure we got proper seating." I spotted them in the family waiting area. My father wore an expensive charcoal suit that screamed corporate success. My mother was in a cream-colored dress and jacket, her pearl necklace catching the light. They looked like they were attending a business function rather than their daughter's graduation. "You made it," I said, approaching with a hopeful smile. "Traffic was lighter than expected," my father replied, checking his watch. "The ceremony starts at 10, correct? I have calls scheduled for later this afternoon." No hug, no, "You look beautiful," or "We're proud of you," just a concern about his schedule. "Yes, 10 o'clock, I confirmed, my smile faltering slightly. "It should last about 2 hours. 2 hours for everyone to walk across a stage?" My mother sighed. "They could simply mail the diplomas and save everyone the time." I swallowed my disappointment. "I should go line up with my department. I'll see you afterward by the psychology building for photos." They nodded and I walked away, reminding myself that the day was still young. There was still time for things to change. The ceremony itself was a blur of emotions. Sitting along my fellow psychology graduates, I felt a surge of pride when our department was called and we stood together. Walking across that stage, hearing my name announced, with summa cum laude following it, gripping my diploma case, these moments felt monumental. I scanned the audience as I crossed the stage, spotting my parents in the 10th row. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a flicker of pride on my father's face as he raised his hand in a small wave, but it disappeared so quickly I might have imagined it. After the ceremony, amid the chaos of thousands of graduates and families, I found my parents waiting by the psychology building as planned. My mother immediately reached to adjust my cap, which had slightly shifted. "Stand straight, Christian," she instructed, as my father positioned his expensive camera. "No one wants photos of poor posture." We took the obligatory shots, me holding my diploma, me with each parent individually, one family photo that a passing student captured for us. Throughout it all, their compliments were surface level at best. "The ceremony was well organized," my father remarked. "Your hair looks nice pulled back like that," my mother added. Not "congratulations" or "we're proud of you," just comments on logistics and appearance. As we walked toward the parking area, my father surprised me by saying, "We thought we might take you to dinner to celebrate. There's a French place downtown, Lateau. I hear the food is excellent." Lateau was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city, the kind of place my parents would normally reserve for business dinners or anniversary celebrations, never somewhere they would take me. "That sounds wonderful," I replied, hope flickering back to life. Perhaps this fancy dinner was their way of showing they cared, of marking the occasion as special. "I made reservations for 6:30, my father continued. "We can meet you there if you need to change or refresh." "No, I'll ride with you," I said quickly, not wanting to separate now that things seemed to be improving. "My dress is fine for the restaurant, right?" I glanced down at my carefully chosen outfit. My mother gave me a quick over once. "It will do," she said, with a small nod that I chose to interpret as approval. The drive to the restaurant was filled with what passed for pleasant conversation in our family. My father talked about a case he had recently won. My mother discussed an upcoming charity gala she was helping organize. I waited for them to ask me about my plans, about the job offer I had accepted, but they didn't. Still, I remained optimistic as we pulled up to the restaurant's valet parking. Lateau was everything its reputation promised. Crystal chandeliers, pristine white tablecloths, servers in formal attire, and a hushed atmosphere of exclusivity. The maitre d' recognized my father immediately. "Mr. Johnson, welcome back. Your table is ready. The best in the house as requested." We were led to a corner table near the windows with an excellent view of both the restaurant and the city beyond. My father ordered champagne without consulting the menu, and I felt a small thrill at being treated as an adult worthy of celebration. When the champagne arrived, my father raised his glass. "To graduation," he said simply. Not to Christian or to your achievement, just to the event itself. Still, I clinked my glass against theirs and sipped the expensive champagne, determined to enjoy this rare moment of familial harmony. "This is lovely," I said, looking around at the elegant surroundings. "Thank you for bringing me here." "Every milestone deserves proper acknowledgement," my mother replied, studying her menu. "The foie gras here is exceptional." For a brief, shining moment, as we ordered appetizers and made small talk about the restaurant's decor, I allowed myself to believe that this dinner represented a turning point in our relationship. Perhaps my graduation had finally proven my worth to them. Perhaps now, at last, I would receive the validation I had craved for so long. The appetizers arrived, delicate plates of seared scallops for my mother, escargot for my father, and a goat cheese salad for me. As we began to eat, my father asked about other graduates in my program. "Was that Sullivan role in your department? Martha's daughter?" "Caitlin Sullivan was in business, not psychology," I replied, having only met her once at a campus mixer. "Smart girl," my father nodded approvingly. "Business opens doors. I imagine she has several offers already." I took a deep breath, seeing my opening. "Actually, I have some good news about my job. The position at the Bowman Institute."
"Yes, that research place," my mother interrupted, waving her fork dismissively. "What exactly will you be doing there? Filing papers and making coffee?" "No, Mother," I said, maintaining my composure. "I will be a research associate working directly with Dr. Whitman on a longitudinal study of emotional development in adolescents." My father set down his fork. "And the compensation? What does a research associate earn these days?" I shared the salary figure, which was actually quite respectable for an entry-level position in my field. My father scoffed. That is what our junior paralegals make, and they have potential for advancement. I have potential for advancement too, I countered. This position could lead to— Christian, my mother cut in. You look like you've gained weight since we last saw you. All that studying and stress eating. I suppose you really should be careful. No one takes a heavy woman seriously in professional settings. The abrupt change of subject was a familiar tactic designed to throw me off balance and reassert control of the conversation. I felt my cheeks flush, but forced myself to take a sip of water instead of responding to the bait. The Institute is very well respected, I continued, determined to make them understand the value of my opportunity. Their research has influenced educational policy across the country. Policy, my father repeated with a slight sneer. Politics and paperwork. You could have been a surgeon, Christian, or a corporate attorney. You had the test scores, the intelligence. Instead, you will spend your days asking people about their feelings. The main courses arrived. Filet mignon for my father, sea bass for my mother, and roasted duck for me. The timing provided a brief respite from the criticism, but it didn't last long. We ran into the gardeners last week, my mother said, as she delicately cut her fish. Their son just finished his first year at Harvard Medical, top of his class. Good for him, I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. He was in your advanced placement classes in high school, wasn't he? My father asked, though he knew perfectly well. Same opportunities, but he chose to apply himself to something substantial. Each word felt like a small cut. I had graduated with honors, secured a position at a respected institution, and was about to begin a career I was passionate about. Yet, in their eyes, I had failed because I hadn't chosen the path they wanted.
It all poured out of me in that parking lot. After what seems like hours but was probably only 15 minutes, I managed to calm myself enough to drive. Without conscious thought, I headed straight to Jennifer's apartment. She opened the door, took one look at my tear-stained face, and pulled me into a tight hug without saying a word. They said they wish I had never been born, I whispered against her shoulder. Then they do not deserve you, she replied firmly, guiding me to her couch. Not one bit of you. I collapsed onto her sofa as she went to make tea, the weight of what had happened finally hitting me fully. My phone started buzzing in my purse, texts and calls from my parents. I pulled it out to silence it and saw the messages already coming through. You are overreacting. This display was childish and embarrassing. Call us immediately so we can discuss your behavior. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement of the cruelty of their words. Just blame and demands for compliance as always. Jennifer returned with mugs of tea and took the phone from my hand, reading the messages with growing anger. Unbelievable, she muttered, setting the phone face down on the coffee table. You were not calling them back tonight. She called Kyle, who arrived 20 minutes later with ice cream and a fierce protectiveness that made me cry all over again, this time from gratitude. These two people, who had no obligation to me by blood or law, showed more care in one evening than my parents had in my entire life. We stayed up late talking through what had happened and what might come next. Neither of them tried to minimize my pain or offer platitudes about family always working things out. Instead, they validated my feelings and supported my right to protect myself from further harm. You can stay here as long as you need, Jennifer offered. My couch is your couch. I finally fell asleep around 3 a.m, emotionally exhausted but with a strange sense of peace beneath the pain. For the first time in my life, I had stood up for myself completely, without apology or compromise. When I woke the next morning, sunlight was streaming through Jennifer's living room windows, and my phone showed 37 missed calls and messages. I scrolled through them briefly, my parents alternating between demands that I apologize for making a scene and attempts at guilt that grew increasingly desperate as the night wore on. Reading their words with morning clarity, I saw something I had never fully recognized before. They had no power over me anymore. I was an adult with a degree, a job offer, and the ability to make my own choices. The only hold they had was emotional, and I could choose to break that hold. Sitting there on Jennifer's couch, still in my Navy graduation dress from the day before, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I would take the job in Seattle, move across the country, and truly live as if I had no parents, not out of spite or revenge, but as an act of self-preservation and growth. I need to disappear from their lives, I told Jennifer when she emerged from her bedroom. It is the only way I will ever be free. She nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. Then that is what we will help you do. The next week passed in a whirlwind of activity. I formally accepted the position at the Bowman Institute, giving them my start date of August 1st, just 6 weeks away. Jennifer and Kyle helped me create a strategic exit plan that would minimize any contact with my parents. First, I changed my phone number, giving the new one only to trusted friends and professional contacts. I set up email filters to send my parents' messages directly to a folder I wouldn't have to see. I closed all social media accounts and created new ones under slightly different variations of my name with strict privacy settings. My lease was ending at the end of the month anyway, so I accelerated my moving plans. Jennifer and Kyle helped me pack my apartment into boxes, which we stored temporarily in Kyle's garage. I sold my furniture rather than dealing with moving it across the country, keeping only books, clothes, and personal items that would fit in my car. "Are you sure about driving all that way alone?" Jennifer asked as we taped up another box. "I need the time to think," I explained. 3,000 miles of open road and new beginnings. The hardest part was dealing with the remaining financial connections. I had a joint bank account that had been established when I was a teenager. I opened a new account at a different bank and transferred my portion of the funds. I wrote a check returning every penny my parents had contributed to my education since my grandmother's passing, with a brief note: "This clears any financial obligation between us." Through it all, my parents continued their attempts to contact me, first with anger, then with fake concern about my mental state, then with threats to file a missing person report despite knowing exactly where I was. Their messages revealed their true worry, not my well-being, but how my disappearance would look to others in their social circle. "Your father had to make excuses at the club yesterday," my mother wrote in one email that made it past my filters. "People are asking questions. This behavior reflects poorly on all of us." I did not respond. Instead, I focused on preparing for my new life in Seattle. I researched neighborhoods, looking for an affordable apartment in a safe area. I studied the transit system and local amenities. I read everything I could about the Bowman Institute and the specific research projects I would be joining. Exactly 1 week after graduation, Jennifer, Kyle, and I loaded my Honda Civic with my essential belongings. The trunk and back seat were packed with carefully labeled boxes, leaving just enough room for a small overnight bag on the passenger seat. "Here's an emergency credit card," Jennifer said, pressing a card into my hand. "Kyle and I got it for you, just in case." "And this is from both of us," Kyle added, handing me a sealed envelope. "Do not open it until you reach Seattle." I hugged them both, fighting tears. "I can't not thank you enough." "Just build a good life," Jennifer said. "That is all the thanks we need." The drive across the country became a kind of therapy. Each mile put physical distance between me and my past. I stayed in modest motels, ate at local diners, and watched the landscape change from the familiar Northeast to the wide-open plains of the Midwest, through the mountains, and finally to the lush greenery of the Pacific Northwest. Along the way, I had a lot of time to think about family, what it should be versus what mine had been, about my future, what I wanted versus what had been expected of me, about healing, how to move forward without carrying the weight of rejection with me. Seattle welcomed me with misty rain and spectacular views of mountains and water. My first apartment was a small studio in the Capitol Hill neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but all mine, with no expectations attached to the walls. I filled it with secondhand furniture, bright throw pillows, and bookshelves that I stocked with psychology texts and novels my parents would have dismissed as frivolous. On my first official day at the Bowman Institute, I opened the envelope from Jennifer and Kyle. Inside was a card that read, "Family is who loves you for exactly who you are. We are your family now and always." Along with it was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a phoenix, the mythical bird that rises from ashes to begin anew. I wore that necklace on my first day, drawing strength from it as I navigated the complex halls of the Institute. Dr. Whitman, my supervisor, was a brilliant woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense attitude and unexpectedly kind eyes. Christian Johnson, she said, reviewing my file, summa cum laude, excellent recommendations from Dr. Rosenberg. I have high expectations for you. I will not disappoint you, I promised and meant it. The work was challenging and fulfilling. I helped design research protocols, conducted interviews with study participants, analyzed data, and contributed to papers that would eventually be published in respected journals. For the first time in my life, my intelligence and work ethic were appreciated, rather than taken for granted. Outside of work, I slowly built a new social circle. My neighbor Sophia, a graphic designer with a contagious laugh, invited me to a book club. There I met Marcus, a high school English teacher with thoughtful eyes and a quiet confidence I found intriguing. Neither of them knew anything about my past, and I found it liberating to be known only as the person I was becoming, not the daughter who had never been enough. 6 months passed without contact with my parents. They had eventually stopped calling my old number and sending emails when they received no response. Through a mutual family friend, I heard they were telling people I had had some kind of breakdown after graduation and needed time to sort myself out. The same friend reported that they seemed more concerned with managing appearances than with my actual well-being.
What your parents said to you was emotional abuse, she stated plainly in one session. And from what you have described, it was part of a lifelong pattern. I still feel guilty sometimes, I admitted, for cutting them off completely. Guilt is common in children of emotionally unavailable parents, she explained. You were conditioned to believe that their happiness and comfort were your responsibility, but they were the parents. Your well-being should have been their priority, not the other way around. Working with Dr. Landon, I began to understand how deeply my parents' treatment had affected me. My perfectionism, my anxiety, my tendency to apologize for taking up space. Recognizing these patterns was the first step toward changing them. The first holiday season away from my family brought unexpected challenges. Thanksgiving and Christmas had never been particularly warm in our household, but they were familiar traditions nonetheless. Now I faced them alone, 3,000 miles from anyone I'd known longer than a few months. Sophia noticed my mood dipping as November arrived. First holidays are the hardest, she said, though I hadn't told her my situation. Come to my family's Thanksgiving. My mom always cooks for an army, and we have a strict no questions policy for strays. I accepted gratefully and found myself at a chaotic, loving family gathering that bore no resemblance to the formal, tense holiday meals of my childhood. Sophia's parents argued good-naturedly about the proper way to carve a turkey. Her brothers told embarrassing stories about each other. Her grandmother insisted on second helpings for everyone. No one asked about my family or why I wasn't with them. For Christmas, Marcus invited me to join a group of friends for what they called Misfit Christmas, a gathering of people who, for various reasons, weren't with biological family for the holiday. We exchanged inexpensive but thoughtful gifts, played board games, and sang off-key carols. It wasn't perfect, but it was warm and genuine. Slowly, I was building new traditions and connections. My work at the Institute was going exceptionally well. I had received my first promotion after just a year, becoming a research coordinator with more responsibility and better pay. I had made friends who knew nothing of my past, but appreciated who I was in the present. 2 years after graduation, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, a significant upgrade from my first studio, and looked out at the Seattle skyline. I was wearing the Phoenix necklace from Jennifer and Kyle, who remained steadfast friends despite the distance. We video chatted regularly, and they had even flown out to visit once. You seem different, Jennifer had observed during that visit. More confident. I am different, I had told her. I am becoming who I was always meant to be. Standing on that balcony 2 years after the dinner that had changed everything, I realized an important truth. In wishing I had never been born, my parents had inadvertently set me free to be reborn as the person I chose to be, not the one they had tried to force me to become. The email arrived on an ordinary Tuesday, nearly 2.5 years after I had walked out of La Hateau and out of my parents' lives.
The subject line read simply, "We need to talk." My father had somehow obtained my work email, which was publicly listed on the Bowman Institute website. The message was brief. "Your mother and I will be in Seattle next weekend for a medical conference. We would like to meet with you. Please respond with a time and place." No apology, no acknowledgement of what had happened, just the expectation that I would comply, as I had always had before. I sat staring at the screen, my heart racing, unsure how to respond or whether to respond at all. The life I had built in Seattle felt suddenly fragile, as if their mere presence in the same city might shatter it piece by piece. I forwarded the email to Dr. Landon and asked for an emergency session that evening. She fit me in at 7 o'clock after her regular appointments. "You do not owe them a meeting," she reminded me as I sat anxiously in her office. "Your boundaries are valid and necessary." "I know," I said, "but part of me thinks that if I do not see them, they will continue to have power over me, like I am still running, still afraid." We discussed the options, the potential outcomes, and most importantly, what I needed to protect my own well-being. "If you decide to meet them," Dr. Landon advised, "do it on your terms, a public place, a time limit, clear boundaries, and have support ready afterward." After careful consideration, I replied to my father's email, "I will meet you at Westlake Coffee Shop Saturday at 11 a.m. I can stay for 30 minutes only." The coffee shop was busy enough to be public, but quiet enough for conversation. It was near Marcus's apartment, where I planned to go immediately afterward. Both Sophia and Marcus knew what was happening and had promised to be available if I needed them. When Saturday arrived, I dressed carefully in a professional outfit that made me feel confident. Charcoal gray slacks, a blue silk blouse, and the phoenix necklace for courage. I arrived 15 minutes early to select a table in the corner where I could see the door. They entered precisely at 11, looking older than I remembered, but otherwise unchanged. My father wore a business casual outfit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. My mother was in a designer dress with her pearl necklace. They spotted me immediately and made their way over, my father leading with purposeful strides. "Christian," he said, extending his hand as if this were a business meeting, "you look well." I shook his hand briefly, but did not rise for the hug my mother seemed to expect. "Please sit down," I said, gesturing to the chairs across from me. "Would you like coffee?" "We already ordered at the counter," my mother replied, her eyes scanning me critically. "You have lost weight." Of course, that would be her first observation. "How did you find my work email?" I asked, skipping the small talk. "Your father has connections," she replied vaguely. "We have been trying to reach you for some time." I was not hiding. I simply chose not to be in contact. An uncomfortable silence fell. My father cleared his throat. "Your behavior has been extremely distressing to your mother. The way you left that dinner, cutting off all contact, it was immature and hurtful." I felt a familiar anger rising, but kept my voice steady. "Do you remember what you said to me at that dinner?" He waved his hand dismissively. "Everyone says things they do not mean in the heat of the moment. You told me you wished I had never been born." I stated plainly. That was not the heat of the moment. That was the culmination of a lifetime of criticism and conditional love. "You were exaggerating," my mother interjected. "We have always wanted what is best for you." "No," I corrected her. "You have always wanted what you think is best for yourselves. A daughter who reflects well on you, who makes choices you can brag about to your friends, not a daughter who is authentic and happy." The barista called their names, and my father went to retrieve their drinks. My mother leaned forward. "This little rebellion has gone on long enough, Christian. People are asking questions. Your father has had to make excuses at his firm. It reflects poorly on us." And there it was, their true concern. Not my well-being, but their image. When my father returned and set their elaborate coffee drinks on the table, I decided to be direct. "Why are you really here? What do you want from me?" They exchanged glances. "We want things to go back to normal," my father said. "Family should be in contact. The holidays have been awkward without you." "Awkward?" I repeated. "Not sad or incomplete. Awkward." "That is not what I meant," he backtracked. "I think it is exactly what you meant. And that is the problem. I was never a person to you, just an extension of yourselves, a reflection of your expectations. When I chose my own path, I became an inconvenience, an embarrassment." "That is unfair," my mother protested weakly. "Is it?" I asked. "You have been here for 5 minutes and have not once asked about my life, my work, my happiness. You have only mentioned how my absence affects you." They looked taken aback, as if this perspective had never occurred to them. "I have built a life here, a good life. I have friends who value me for who I have, work that matters to me and makes a difference in the world. I have peace." "We are still your parents," my father said, his tone carrying the authority that once would have silenced me immediately. "Biology made you my parents," I acknowledged, "but you chose not to be my family. Family supports, family accepts, family loves unconditionally. You did none of those things." My mother's eyes filled with tears, the first genuine emotion I had seen from her in years. "We do love you, Kristen, in our way." "Your way was harmful," I said gently. "It took me years of therapy to understand that I am worthy of love exactly as I am, not for my achievements or compliance, but simply for being me." My father shifted uncomfortably. "Therapy," he muttered, "always looking for someone to blame." "I am not blaming you for who you are," I clarified. "I am holding you accountable for your actions and protecting myself from further harm." I glanced at my watch. 20 minutes have passed. I have 10 minutes left. If there is anything meaningful you want to say, now is the time. My directness seemed to unsettle them. They had come expecting either the compliant daughter they had controlled for years, or perhaps an angry confrontation they could dismiss as emotional instability. My calm clarity left them without their usual scripts. After a long pause, my father spoke. What would it take to reestablish contact? It was a transactional question, typical of him, but at least it was honest. First, a genuine acknowledgement of the harm done, not just at that dinner, but throughout my life. Second, respect for my boundaries and choices going forward. Third, a willingness to build a new relationship based on mutual respect, not authority and obedience. "And if we cannot meet those conditions?" my mother asked quietly. "Then we remain as we are. I will continue my life without you in it. The choice is yours." They did not know how to respond to this reversal of power. For the first time in our relationship, I was setting the terms, not them. As our time drew to a close, I stood to leave. "I have to go. I have plans with friends." "Can we contact you again?" my mother asked hesitantly. I wrote my personal email on a napkin and slid it across the table. "This is the only contact information I am comfortable sharing right now. If you decide you can meet my conditions, you can reach me here. But please understand, I will not respond to manipulation, guilt, or demands." I walked out of the coffee shop feeling lighter than I had expected. There had been no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful apologies or promises of change. But I had spoken my truth calmly and clearly, and for once they had been forced to listen. Marcus was waiting at his apartment with comfort food and no pressure to talk until I was ready. When I finally shared what had happened, he listened attentively. "Are you okay?" he asked when I finished. "Surprisingly, yes," I replied. For so long, I was afraid of confronting them, afraid they still had power over me. But they do not anymore. Over the following months, my parents made halting, imperfect attempts at communication. An email acknowledging that perhaps they had been overly critical at times, a birthday card with a gift certificate and an awkward note about being proud of my dedication, small steps that showed they were at least trying to understand what I needed,
even if they were not fully capable of providing it. I maintained firm boundaries, responding only to genuine attempts at connection and ignoring anything that felt manipulative or controlling. Sometimes weeks would pass without contact. I was okay with that. The relationship, such as it was, existed on my terms now. Meanwhile, my life continued to flourish. My research on emotional resilience in adolescence was selected for publication in a major journal. I developed close friendships with people who appreciated my sensitivity rather than seeing it as a weakness. My relationship with Marcus deepened into something meaningful and supportive, built on mutual respect and genuine affection. The healing was ongoing. There were still days when old insecurities surfaced, when I questioned my worth or sought external validation, but those days grew fewer and farther between as I learned to recognize my own value apart from others' approval. 3 years after that devastating graduation dinner, I stood at a podium presenting my research findings at a national conference. As I spoke confidently about the importance of emotional validation in healthy development, I caught sight of the phoenix pendant resting against my collarbone and smiled slightly at the symbolism. The journey from that restaurant to this podium had been long and often painful. But like the phoenix, I had emerged from the ashes of rejection stronger and more authentic than before. The words that were meant to destroy me, "We wish you were never born," had instead been the catalyst for my rebirth. What I learned through it all was something I now share with the young people in my research studies. Your worth is inherent, not earned. Your value does not depend on someone else's ability to see it. And sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you were born into. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who couldn't accept your choices? I would love to hear your stories in the comments. If this resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength through difficult family dynamics. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message of hope and self-worth, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, you are worthy of love exactly as you are.